Hello, everyone. This is your host, Susan Rosen, and welcome to Healthy Tips After 50. And my guest today is here on a dual purpose. One is to tell us about his product and the work that he's been doing. And the other part is that he's got a really exciting summit coming up having to do with health and growing old. And doing that from a good point of view and not a negative point of view, which it
Growing
gets a
old
lot of.
gracefully at a
Thank
minimum.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Exactly. I was going to say growing old gets a bad rap. So I think,
I think it does.
yeah.
And we'll
So,
talk about that because I
yeah.
share with people results from my molecule and they give
hmm
me responses that I'm not anticipating. So we can dive into that.
Wow. Okay. That sounds good. So, okay. Why don't you, now that we started that, why don't you I'm going to throw it back over to you and let you explain um, what your My Vital C, which you can see behind you, is. There you go,
Yeah.
and
So
how it can help everybody because we all
yeah.
need it.
So I mean, really, and here to talk about the book, right? Live longer and better.
Yes,
I
yeah.
love the byline. Your journey to living longer and better has never been more achievable than today. And so,
Ah,
yeah, right. We're close. That's exciting.
yeah.
Really, really exciting. And what I get to
hmm
do on a daily basis, adding more information into my own brain and then turning that information into either a book or a longevity summit or a
Uh-huh.
podcast or whatever it is that I'm doing is extremely exciting. And everything I'm about to share is actually in the book. It's really my journey from, hey, why did I want to become an entrepreneur, which is kind of interesting. What were the decisions that I made to become an entrepreneur? How were those decisions actually kind of circumvented? They didn't happen the way that I had them planned. And they happened, one could argue in a better way than the way that I had planned.
They
And
usually do.
yeah, whatever happens is
Don't
best.
mean to interrupt you, but I mean
Yeah.
they usually do. Yeah.
No, I agree. So really, what we're talking about, and I'm holding a molecule, and if you're just listening, don't worry. Think about a soccer ball where the lines on the soccer ball represent the bonds between the carbon atoms. So you have a spherical molecule of 60 carbon atoms, and this is a molecule of 60 carbon atoms, and it was discovered in 1985 here in Houston. That's where I'm based at Rice University,
Ah.
very prestigious
Oh,
university.
yeah.
Um, and the three scientists who discovered it actually went on to win a Nobel Prize for their discovery. So actually,
Wow.
they discovered it in 85, won the Nobel Prize in 96. So a short 11 years from discovery to being
hmm
awarded the Nobel Prize. The molecule's amazing. I describe it as performing as well or better than the current best material in almost every application. So it makes
Wow.
better inks, better tires, better batteries, better photocells. And this is where people start to get nervous because they're like, I thought we were talking about a health supplement. I didn't think we were talking about batteries, tires, photocells. In fact, I never, ever think about, hey, that car battery over there. What components of that car battery should I be
All
consuming
right.
on a daily basis, right? So this makes people nervous. I'm going to make you a little more nervous before we get into the good side, right?
Okay.
Because of different shapes on the exterior of the soccer ball shaped molecule, they thought that the molecule would be toxic. So they put it in a toxicity study. By the way, my lab provided the materials, and my lab is mentioned in that peer reviewed published research.
All
And
right.
instead of being toxic, the test subjects that they gave it to, really the subjects that they gave My Vital C to, lived 90% longer than the control group.
Wow.
So that's the single, yeah, wow. It's the single longest longevity experimental result in history on peer-reviewed published research. That's the kind of research that you'd want to, hang your hat
Yeah.
on. Hey, this
Oh,
is
yeah.
something I want to try. It's peer-reviewed published research.
Yeah.
So amazing result. And that shot me in the direction, really kind of changed me from being a happy-go-lucky carbon nanomaterial scientist which I am still, to getting into a health supplement industry that really my business partner and I weren't very interested in getting in, right? They're very different businesses. Like I deliver this molecule, right? This soccer ball shaped molecule to a research institute, in California, and they have the equipment and they have the staff and they have the know-how to confirm that I ship to them what I promised I was going to ship to them. It's very different than the supplement industry, the health supplement industry, where I ship products or other people ship products and there's no testing, right? There's no verification. And in fact, when we were debating whether we wanted to get into this industry, I found a peer-reviewed published paper that said 50% of the supplements that particular researcher had tested off of the market did not have in them what they said they had in them, right? So there's just a lot of concerns in the supplement space. And my business partner and I really tried not to get into the supplement space. Really, what pushed us into the supplement space is our customers ultimately, right? A guy with a big YouTube following who started talking about all the benefits he was getting taking the product on a daily basis. And then our phone just started ringing 10 times a day. So
I bet.
Yeah. And that's what ultimately brought the product to market. Now, I'm going to share, there's a number of instances in my life where I would have said, hey, here's where you're going to be in a certain amount of time. And I would have said, no, that's not going to happen.
I
right?
don't think so. Yeah.
I think one of them was I'm in college, I'm studying mechanical engineer to be an entrepreneur. And I think if you had said, hey, you're going to be a carbon nanomaterial scientist, I like to call myself a happy-go-lucky carbon nanomaterial scientist in 3 years, I probably would have said no. I mean, I would have been open to the possibility, but no, I don't know how I'm getting from my class today and knowing my business partner to us actually starting a business and delivering this Nobel Prize. Ultimately, remember, we were manufacturing it before the Nobel Prize was even awarded. So we're delivering this Nobel Prize winning carbon molecule. So that would be one instance. I think another would be, and this probably goes back a lot closer to 7, 8 years ago, if you had said, hey, you are going to be in the health supplement business. You're going to still be a happy-go-lucky carbon nanomaterial scientist, but you're going to be in the health supplement business and you're going to be well on your way to becoming a longevity expert. I would have said, no, that's probably not going to happen because I didn't see how I would get from there to here. And then the next is, as part of becoming a longevity expert, to have written a book, right? I don't really write, right? I participate in the blogs for our business. I participate in the marketing content for our business and the descriptions on the website. But I definitely don't fancy myself a writer. But I also knew that at some point it became clear to me that I was going to write a book, or at least engage somebody to help me write a book, because I've always felt as I'm accumulating knowledge, there's 2 reasons to share that knowledge. The first one is for the sake of sharing, right? Like I've done this research, I've dug in deeper than most people will and want to, and I should share that information. And the other one is actually significantly more selfish, which is I believe when I share information, when I train people the information that I know, that's when I cement that knowledge in my head. So you actually really, right, when you teach it. And so
I agree.
I knew I was going to write a book. It was kind of pandemic time. I reached out. There's a really famous book called Lifespan, Why We Age and Why We Don't Have to, by Dr. David Sinclair. Amazing book. And he's actually a Harvard medical researcher, so not a physician, but a medical researcher with 25 years of experience in the longevity space. It's amazing work. The book is amazing. I couldn't recommend Lifespan more. That's the name of the book. I reached out to his Yeah, that's a great book. I reached out to his co-author, who is Matt LaPlante. I'm like, hey, do you have any time in your schedule? I'm thinking about writing a book in a similar space. And he got back to me. He's like, no, I'm too busy. I don't have opportunity. So I knew I was going to write a book. I knew I needed a co-author, trying to figure out how to find one. And then one day I find myself on the phone with Dr. Jerome Corsi. He loves our product. He's seen a lot of my videos out there. And so we're having this really cool conversation about all the benefits he's getting on the product, and like he really wants to facilitate moving it forward. But it was one of those conversations where I'm like, I don't know what's going to come out of this conversation. Like, I don't know exactly why we're having the conversation. And then I Googled him, right? So I did a quick little search, Dr. Jerome Corsi, and it turns out he's a 2-time #1 New York Times bestseller. Now, to be a New York Times bestseller is an immensely impressive accomplishment. To be a 2-time New York #1 bestseller is just off the charts. And so in my kind of little mind, I was like, oh, that's why I'm talking to him. He's going to be my co-author.
Yeah.
And sure
Oh my
enough,
God.
we chat about it. And he's like, it makes sense for what he's trying to accomplish. It makes sense for what I'm trying to accomplish. And so off we go writing the book. And I've got to be honest. Again, I told you I don't fancy myself a writer. I thought what was going to happen is he's watched a lot of videos. He's going to interview me, and then he's going to write a book, and then he's going to send it to me. And I'm going, that's a great book. We should publish it. And then we're off and running. In our first meeting, you're exactly right. Our first meeting, he was like, Chris, I need you to write your story down. And I was like, I guess I'm writing a book. So I wrote down my story in bits and pieces and the way that I would tell the story. And ultimately what's in, right, the book, Live Longer and Better, he cleaned it up immensely. Like it's just so much better. His prose is so much better. But he did give me a really nice compliment, which was he likes how I write. He likes what I write about. He likes that, it's kind of a self-deprecating. I talk about, falling asleep behind the wheel. Nobody got hurt, including myself, and more importantly, others. But that adventure, an explosion at our manufacturing plant. We talk about how we almost had our facility at the University of Houston campus. We talked about writing a business plan and how that business plan, really nothing in that business plan happened. And so you have to pivot, and that's an important lesson in life. And so now I'm proud to have this book out there. Ultimately, I share all of that. And then as I'm diving into longevity, the kind of latter part of the book shares longevity tips and tricks that I'm gleaning from this kind of, for me at the time, new world. In the middle of all that, right? So there's, are you going to be a carbon nanomaterial scientist? I don't think so. Are you going to be a supplement longevity expert who's written a book? I don't think so. And then the next one is, are you going to have hosted a longevity summit? So I kind of framed the question this way. Susan, if you had come to me 6 months ago, maybe it's 7, and said, Chris, you're going to host a longevity summit. You're going to interview 55 experts in longevity, who, by the way, I didn't know at the time.
Yeah.
And 3 of those experts are going to include the biggest names in biohacking and longevity that really exist, right? And let me kind of run those down. The first is Dave Asprey, and a lot of your audience may not have heard of him, but they've probably heard of Bulletproof Coffee, right? It's a great coffee recipe with ghee and MCT. By the way, we have an MCT product. I use that in my coffee every day. Bulletproof Coffee, and he's actually the founder of just the phrase biohacking, right? So
for sure,
the founder guy. So I interviewed him.
Yep.
Or you're telling me, Chris, you got to interview him. You also have to interview Ben Greenfield. He's a little bit lesser known, but if you're in the biohacking and longevity community, he's extremely well known and just a powerhouse and wealth of knowledge. And then Dr. Stephen Gundry. Dr. Stephen Gundry is amazing. He's a 4-time New York Times bestseller. He's a former practicing pediatric thoracic heart surgeon, right? That's the kind of career you don't leave, right? Frankly, because it's just so lucrative. You don't leave that career. And he left that career to deliver even more value. I mean, you're doing heart surgery on children, and he found a way to deliver more value than that. If you had told me 55 experts, including those 3, I would have said, Susan, the reality is I like to set myself up for success, not failure. I don't know how I would accomplish that. And yet here I am on the backside of it. I've accomplished it. It's actually going live February 26th through March 3rd. And that's why I'm back on your show. One, I want to share some of the stuff that the longevity experts shared with me. And then ultimately, if anybody's interested in the book, I've got a charity component to purchasing the book. So that's really exciting. But yeah, that's kind of the long and short of how we reconnected.
Yeah, yeah. Oh no, exactly. Exactly. Boy, you've worn me out from
Your audience may hear my throat is a little, I don't know, crusty or whatever.
scratchy.
I have some phlegm in my lungs. Now,
Oh,
crazy thing,
good.
and I think this is because of my product. It hasn't slowed me down. I trained this morning. I trained all last week. I
Wow.
was on 12 podcasts last week. So,
Oh my
so
God.
it's a lot. And it sounds horrible, but yeah, it's still here. I don't know what's going on. So I might mute
Yeah.
myself. You
Well,
might see.
that could also be from being on 12 podcasts and talking.
It is a little tiring. Yeah.
Well, it is for your vocal cords, right?
I would
Yeah.
hope that it would help bring up phlegm from my lungs and just get it out of my system. But it
Yeah.
hasn't done that yet. So, we'll get there.
Yeah.
I'll survive.
Steam, I think, is one of the best things. Those humidifier things.
Yeah. I do take really hot showers in the morning, like, because in the morning you end up
Mm-hmm.
trying to bring up as much as you can so you can make it
Mm-hmm.
through the day.
Right.
But that is where I'm at now.
Ah, okay.
So
That's so much in such a short amount of time.
yeah, so I've got some like tips and tricks from longevity
Okay.
experts and shocking surprises and those types of things.
Uh-huh.
Again, it's free. You just need to give your name and your email, and there'll be a link in the show notes.
Okay.
But one of the things that I think really stood out for me, and I'm going to put this in this perspective. Let me kind of lay the groundwork first. So, as I tell people about the original study, right, where test subjects given my molecule, a lab, my molecule provided, my lab provided the molecule to the researchers, were mentioned in the peer-reviewed published study, and those test subjects, in this case, Wistar rats, lived 90% longer. I typically get two responses. The first one is if they're a New Yorker, they're like, why would we want a rat to live longer? Chris, you need to bury this research, make sure no one ever sees this research. You are an evil, bad person, and I want to stop talking. The other response is, why would I want to live longer? Right? They say, at least say,
Right.
hey, you're going to
Oh,
probably
yeah.
move this into the house. Why would I want to live longer? And I'll be honest, it surprised me in the beginning because I've always just had a target of 125 as my goal.
Okay.
But then I realized that people aren't hearing the question, do you want to live longer? Right? What they're hearing is, because we can't separate living infirmed and debilitated from living longer, right? We really cannot separate those things in our minds. And so when I changed the question and I was like, Susan, so if you had the same mental capacity you have today, and you have the same mental capacity that you have today, would you then be interested in living longer? And universally, almost everyone changes their mind. They're like, well, that I'm interested in. The other thing, just living longer or living longer in a debilitated state, that I'm not as interested in living in kind of extending my life. And that let's call that an infectious mindset, right? Because I think it's kind of diseased from the perspective of where we are moving. We're in the middle of a longevity revolution. There's a quantum shift in what the medical community is thinking about aging and living longer and living healthier. And so I asked every one of the experts on this summit, so 55 experts, how long do you want to live and how long can humans live? And surprisingly, only 3 of the experts gave the same number. Now think about that. If you believe that humans can live to a number that was thrown out regularly was 120, because we have Jean Clement. She's the oldest reported human. She lived to about 122. So a lot of people said that humans can live to 120, but didn't say they wanted to live to 120.
Right.
And I think
Right.
the reason is they're still not able, even longevity experts who are kind of wrapped up in this
Yeah.
quantum
Yeah.
shift in longevity and how the medical community thinks about living longer, even they don't separate living infirmed and debilitated from actually aging. And so I found that to be a really fascinating aspect that surprised, like it really surprised me that was when I, in hindsight, kind of went back and looked at that piece of data.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's interesting. That is very interesting. Yeah.
And we can do a quick little
From
quiz.
my
Like,
personal, yeah, I was going to say
what's
my
your personal?
personal view. Okay. Two things. One is, and I hate to say this, but I think the world is going in the wrong direction, period. I mean, I'm not even going to get into the details. I mean, I just think that overall, you know, this is not looking good right now.
Yep.
I'm not sure I want to live a whole hell of a lot longer if that's the way it's going to go. I mean, and I'm living in a pretty good place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's number one, right? Which has nothing to do with
health,
physical health.
right? With health,
It has
and
more to do with
longevity,
mental health, right? And emotional health.
And the challenges therein. Yes.
Yes. So without that, we'll take that off the thing for the time being. I wouldn't mind living into my 90s and maybe get up to 100, but I'm not really that excited about like 120. It doesn't, when I think about that, doesn't get me all excited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then how long do you think humans can live?
How long? I'm sorry, say that again.
Do you think humans can live?
I think that 100 or 120 is probably very possible.
Yep.
Yeah. I just I mean, personally, I am kind of on the I was going to say cliff, but I won't go there. On this thing of my brain just not working as well as it did even like 10 years ago.
And that can be terrifying, right? Like
it's but yeah, it's very upsetting. It's gotten a little bit better just recently, but we can talk about that, after we get off.
Yeah. A number of the experts sorry to interject here, but a number of the experts addressed Alzheimer's, addressed dementia, addressed protocols that do address Alzheimer's and dementia. And I'm not suggesting that's where you're at. I'm suggesting that's one of the things that we're really afraid of. And I think rightly so, right? We don't want to be, and the reality is if it's severe enough, the person suffering from the disease doesn't even know what's going on, right? You just don't want to be a burden to the people around you and to cause kind of this emotional stress.
Yep.
But yeah, that's the reason I included some Alzheimer's experts on the longevity summit, right? Because that is a field that we certainly want to address that. Like, I think the worst question you could ask is, how long do you want to live with severe Alzheimer's? And a lot of people were like, that doesn't sound interesting at all.
A day and a half.
Yeah. I don't know, time enough for people to say goodbye to me that I won't remember, and then be done.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's why I wanted to include, Alzheimer's and dementia experts on the longevity summit. Now, is it possible for you to visualize a 120 in your current state, right? Because I know what's happening is you're saying, well, I'm here, right? And I've sensed a decline over whatever we'll say the last 10 years relative to where you are today, and you're picturing that line continuing. But if that line stopped declining and mentally, would you then be like, 120, they're like just another 20 years of doing what you're doing today with the
Mm-hmm.
same capacity physically and mentally. Is that interesting?
Hmm.
Maybe.
My first thought is, I
Eh.
don't know.
So then what is it that you could do that could
Yeah.
reinvigorate that excitement?
Um, get my brain back to where it was 10 or 15 years ago.
So 10 years ago. So
Yeah, 10 or
that's
15. Yeah, somewhere there.
exactly two things. That's exactly what the summit is about, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Kind of aging gracefully, right? And actually
Mm-hmm.
improving and working towards improvements,
Yeah.
changing the mindset about aging, right? So that mental decline and physical decline do not have to be part of aging, right? And then providing tips, tools, and tricks so that you can
Mm-hmm.
actually accomplish that, so that
Yeah.
we can then have this kind of quantum shift in. Wait a minute, if my mental capacity was 10 years ago, and actually, when I was originally thinking about writing a book, it
Mm-hmm.
was going to be about reinventing yourself as if you
Ah.
live forever, as if you were gonna live forever. Because what
Mm-hmm.
happens if you do, right? Like if you're
Yeah.
not satisfied enough with what you're doing today to do it for another 40 years, then what is it that you're doing to change what you're doing today
Yeah. 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 No,
so that you
exactly.
can
Exactly.
enjoy it? And
I actually have a book by somebody else called Reinventing Yourself.
oh yeah, no, it's a
Yeah.
topic that I may come back to because I think it's really powerful, and I think the
Mm-hmm.
concepts behind living a lot longer. Of course, for me,
Mm-hmm.
it's born out of the test subjects given my product live 90% longer than the control group.
Yeah.
The average human lives 90% longer. The average human lives to 152. That's not the
Ah,
oldest. That's the
right. No, no, no.
average, right? So there's a
Wow.
bell curve
Yeah.
around 152. Outliers are going to be, in the 70s, 170s, maybe even into the 180s. So,
Okay.
so these are things like, so now, like this might even be terrifying for you. Let me
Yeah, it is.
suggest you got another 100 years, not just another 20
Oh
years.
no. Oh
What,
no.
see? And what would you, and this is where we've got to be thinking, because
Yeah.
I'll share this. Every one of the longevity experts, of course, I asked the previous question, but I also asked, give me 2 to 3 tips, mindsets, habits, let's
Mm-hmm.
call them
Mm-hmm.
shortcuts, because
Mm-hmm.
everybody likes
Mm-hmm.
shortcuts for
Yeah, right.
longevity and a longer health span that you would share. And then we aggregated all the data, right? And they all had different
Ah.
things, but 33% of them said sleep, 52% of them said exercise,
Mm-hmm.
52% of them said diet. Remember, I only asked for 2 or 3. So it's not that anyone said diet was bad. It's just like 52%
Right.
of
It
them
just wasn't the top. Yeah.
was top. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
46 said mindset. And I got to be honest, when I first
Mm-hmm.
saw that number,
Yeah.
33% said sleep, 46%, is that right? 46? Yeah. 46% said mindset. I was like, I think maybe they got this wrong
Oh,
because we
no.
know how important sleep is. Sleep
Yeah.
is good for your physical, mental, and
Yeah.
emotional well-being.
Oh
No,
yeah. I
that's
can
about.
attest to that. That's what started me on the downward slope. That's a whole nother discussion. Yeah.
And what sent me down, actually, again, fairly knowledgeable on sleep, because our most consistent testimonial is people take our product in the morning, they report
Mm-hmm.
mental focus and energy during the day, and then better sleep
Ah.
at night, right? So that better
Ah.
sleep
Okay.
is great, again, for your
Yeah.
physical, mental, and emotional
Yeah.
well-being.
Yeah.
So I was like, maybe they got this wrong. And then another kind of, actually, one of the stories, and I won't get into the story, but it was from Dr. Gundry, talking
Mm-hmm.
about one of his patients. He still sees patients 6 days a week. Like the guy just
I
keeps working.
know. Isn't it
Love-
amazing?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he loves
Yeah.
what he does. And
Yeah.
why not? Like you're delivering so much value to so many people. But that story, and you can tune into the summit to get
Uh-huh.
that story, was about mindset. And so if you don't have the mindset, let's say your sleep is messed up, but you don't have the mindset to buckle down and do, there's kind of 3 basic things that you can do. Go to sleep at exactly the same time every day, wake up at exactly the same time every day. Make sure that those times give you 7.5 to 9 hours of sleep opportunity. So if you're struggling with sleep and you're not willing, you don't have the mindset to make that non-negotiable, to put away your device before you get in bed, to if you're going to take naps, by the way, naps are amazing and you should be taking naps, but they need to be 20 minutes before 4, right?
Okay.
Never take a nap after 4. If you're not willing to do if you don't have the mindset to do these things, your
Right.
sleep's not going to improve. If you don't have the mindset to start moving, so let's say you're pretty couch potato-ish and you really need to go for a walk. Let's do some movement first. You really need to plan or have a vision of someday getting to actual exercise, right? Where you're doing some resistance training, where you're doing some VO2 max training. But if you're not moving, you got to have the mindset, I'm at least going to move. And if that's just a 5-minute walk every day, start there, right? Because a 5-minute walk every day is better than a 35-minute walk once a week. Every day is better. And then if you get out and if you find that extending it to 15 minutes causes you to not do it, don't extend it. Keep it short. Better to do shorter and do something every day than to do longer and have that be something that's a hindrance. By the way, I have an experience, like I always used to run 3 miles, and 3 miles caused me to run only 2 or 3 times a week. And now I backed it down to 2 and I run every day, right? Like I run 5 days, or not every day, 5 days a week. I'm either running or resistance training. And ironically, by reducing it, I'm doing myself a big favor.
Oh, yeah.
And then the final one is diet. Like this is obvious. If you're not willing to give up those things that are not good for you. So mindset, I think the experts did get it wrong. That mindset is actually more important.
Okay. Okay. Well, yeah, because all those things you talked about are all part of your mindset.
And if you don't have the mindset to make the changes that you need to on the things that are important, sleep, exercise, nutrition, then you're just not going to make that progress. And there's things that you can do for mindset. You can kind of recognize that you don't have that motivation. And there's books that you can find. There's podcasts that you can find. There's, find a group. One of the things that is mentioned, 15% of them mention socialization. I think it's a highly underrated. I mean, the data is really clear. The better your peer group of friends, the longer you live. Like that's just it gets a lot harder as you get older because people do end up dying, but you really should be very flexible and like it sounds horrible, but in replacing the friends who do pass, right? So that you still have that friend group, and maybe they get younger and younger. You have to imagine that Jeanne Clement, when she died at 122, the people that she was hanging out with probably even weren't in her hundreds, were 20 plus years younger than her.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, no, I'm sure. And the other thing that happens as well is, and I think part of this, unfortunately, at least around here, is from COVID, right? Which is that everything shut down and people stopped seeing the people that they normally would see.
Yep.
Right. And if they got to an age where they retired because they didn't want to do whatever it was they were doing anymore, and they could finally stop. Right.
And they had that push, the COVID push, right?
Yes. And, it's like there was no place to keep talking to the people you were talking to or talking to anybody. And I know a number of people who, just their circle just got smaller and smaller and smaller. And there's only like 1 or 2 people that they talk to.
Yep.
And that affects you, whether you realize it or not.
Yeah. And the data is very clear. Again, the bigger your peer friend
cohort
group,
or whatever. Yeah.
Yep. The longer you live, right? Because you have something that excites you to wake up and share information and, help people and, have go about different activities together. Like this is joy, right? Sharing. It almost doesn't happen until you share it. Maybe people are oversharing on social media, but that's a different thing.
Yeah. That's why I love doing my podcast.
Yep.
That's why, everyone's like, well, why aren't you making money off of it? Da, 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 da. It's like, well, not really, because I love doing the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. Love having
You know,
conversations with people
yeah,
around
I
the
love
world.
talking to people. I love finding out about people. I've always been that way. You know, I mean, I'm hanging out somewhere just in the supermarket line, and there's something about me that people will just start talking to me,
Yeah.
and it's like that's okay. You know,
Yeah.
drives my husband crazy, but for me, it's okay.
I think it's better than okay. I think that's awesome. I'm the one who's typically starting up conversations because I
Uh,
like that connection as well.
yeah, 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 exactly, exactly.
Maybe you could teach
So,
a class on how to attract conversations.
oh, God, I wish I knew. I would bottle it.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, I'm really, I don't know. I guess because I just, well, some people are like, oh no, I don't want to, I don't want anybody near me.
Yeah,
I
you
don't want to
can,
talk to
yeah,
anybody.
body
You
language.
know, yeah, yeah, and I certainly don't have that. So, but anyways, well, maybe that's a good point to kind of talk about the summit
Yeah.
and we will put the links into I'll put the links into the show notes
Yeah. Yeah.
and and if I get around to it, I will also put it at the bottom of the things. Although, needless to say, if you're listening to this, you're going to have to go to the show notes anyways,
Yeah.
because you're not going to be seeing the video. So
Yeah.
there you go.
Well, and the link is also fairly long, so the show
Yeah.
notes will be the easiest way to get it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and again, it's free.
Yeah.
It's from
Yeah.
March 26th until February 26th. So this
Yeah.
month, February 26th until March 3rd. The
Yeah.
format is 7 to 8 videos are released every day. So you have access. It's just a list. Hey, I want to watch this one, and you watch them, or you watch all of them. I highly recommend all of them because they're amazing. Certainly hit the keynotes. I'm going to share one other interesting keynote
Uh-huh.
speaker. His name is Sergey Young. He wrote a book, The Science and Technology of Growing Young, and he's an investor in longevity technologies and companies
Oh,
that are doing
interesting.
longevity work, right? So, hey, you hear the phrase, put your money where your mouth is, like he's
Yeah.
actually putting his money where his mind and mouth say it should go. And so
Uh-huh.
that was a fascinating interview. He's a guy who hangs out with Elon Musk. He hangs out with Tony Robbins. There's a guy named Peter Diamandis who is
Oh
with
yeah.
X Prize, created X Prize, and actually
Yep.
recently
Here in the
created,
Bay Area. Yep.
yep, the biggest X Prize, which is the HealthSpan X Prize for
Yep.
$101 million, which is fantastic. So I got to
Yeah.
interview him, and he's an amazing guy.
Wow.
So you get the keynote speakers, and then you get all of the other experts in longevity in kind of very specific areas. And some is aesthetic. So we have a
Mm-hmm.
couple of conversations about hair, like managing hair loss and regrowing
Mm-hmm.
hair, and the
Yeah.
technologies behind that. We
Mm-hmm.
have technology about autoimmune disease, right? As you age, autoimmune disease
Wow.
conditions tend to increase, and so we want to address that. A cancer physician, and how to address that. And he's actually got patents associated with it. So a really kind of big wig in the
Mm-hmm.
patent area.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really fascinating, great conversations. I did
Yeah.
at least an hour of research for each person. By the
Oh,
way,
I
I enjoyed
bet.
every second of that hour, right?
Yeah.
And then um, for the ones who had more content out there, like Dave Asprey, Ben Greenfield, Dr. Stephen Gundry, Sergey Young, I did 3 hours. And there's Dr. Tom O'Brien who wrote the
Oh
book
yeah.
Autoimmune Fix. Yeah. So I
Yep.
got to
Yep.
interview
I
him.
have all those. Yep.
Yeah. So you get access to all of that content. And then, if you can't watch a video on a certain day and you just want access to all the videos, it's only $99. And you have kind of unending access or
Yes.
instant access to all of those. I think
Yes.
it does
Yes.
have to wait until February 26th, but once the
Yeah. Yeah. Usually. Yeah.
summit
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
over, then you'll have access to all those videos.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And like
highly
and
recommend.
like my husband always I always drive me crazy because a whole shitload of these
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. No, it's a lot. It's 45
Yeah,
plus hours of
yeah,
longevity content and great
yeah,
stories and
yeah.
solutions.
And
And
you don't want to listen to it all at one time because you're not going to get as much out of it. You need to really concentrate and
yeah,
listen and apply things.
yeah,
And you can't apply all of it at the same time. I mean,
that's
I
very
guess you
true.
could, but I guess maybe if you're retired, yeah.
It would be a lot of work for sure. So that's it, and it's in the show notes. If they're
Yep.
interested in the book, right? So
Mhm.
we've made, well, first let's talk about the product. If they're interested in trying the product
Yeah.
responsible for the single longest longevity experimental results in history, so that's My Vital C, the molecules ESS60 in olive oil. We've got a link for your audience, and that's myvitalc.com/HTA50, right? So that's healthy tips
Uh-huh.
after 50. So
After 50.
HTA50,
50. Yep. No, that's not spelled out.
50. Yeah.
50. Yeah.
And that same HTA
Uh-huh.
50 is a coupon code that they can use for $15 off of their initial purchase. Now, when they
Ah.
land on that page, myvitalc.com/HTA50, when they land on that page, they'll find our product. We sell 3 oils, olive oil,
Mm.
avocado oil, and MCT oil. And people are like, well, which one should I start with? You should start with the olive oil. And we say that for 2 reasons.
Mm.
One, we're a research-based organization, and all the research is on the ESS60 molecule in olive oil. So that's why you should start there. 2, we can actually get more of the ESS60 molecule to dissolve in olive oil
Oh,
than avocado
interesting.
or MCT. So that's
Huh.
the highest
Okay.
concentration, and
Uh-huh.
it's where all the research is. Now, when you're there, if you're interested in the book, and I hope you are, the book is $20. It's on Amazon if you want it. If you want a signed copy, you do have to get that from our website. And we have a nice
Okay.
charity aspect of signed copies. So on our website,
Okay.
you can buy the book for $20. You can get
Uh-huh.
a signature from me for $10 or from both of the authors for $15. 100% of that signature fee. So the $10 if it's just me, the $15 if it's Dr. Jerome Corsi and myself signing the book,
Mm-hmm.
100% of that goes to OUR, Operation Underground Railroad. They
Uh,
remember the movie The Sound of Freedom. It just came out recently, and it deals with underground child sex trafficking, something we obviously want to get rid of.
oh
And so
yeah.
100% of the signature fee goes to Operation Underground Railroad. We've already made some donations. It's exciting to be supporting that organization. And
Uh,
hey, this little bit of effort of signing it, you get a great signed copy, and Operation
yeah.
Underground Railroad gets another donation.
Wow.
We're
Yeah.
excited about that. And I think that's it. There'll be a link for the summit in the show
Couple
notes.
links. Yeah. Yeah. Couple links.
So
For sure.
I'm excited.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. So am I. So am I. I'm excited to help
Yeah,
in
thank you
any
so much
way.
for having me
So,
back. And
oh
um
yeah.
and like I said, we'll get you some product if you're interested.
Yeah. We'll talk about that when we get off.
Yes, we'll make that happen.
Okay, well, let me just close like I always do, and it's been so long since I did one of these. I have to try and remember what I always say. This is not to be seen as health advice. And if you are having any problems, please go and see your own or some other doctor to help you. And with that, I will say goodbye, and I will see everybody next week.